The warning alarm screamed through every corridor of Kepler Station. Commander. Yelton pressed his blue-clawed hand against the cold metal wall and felt the vibrations from the enemy ships, hammering their shields. Each blast sent tremors through the massive mining station that had been home to 50,000 Zelani refugees for the past 3 years. Shield strength down to 30%, called out Lieutenant Vex from her position at the defense console, her voice cracked with fear as she watched the numbers drop on her screen. The main generators are overloading. We cannot take much more of this. Yelton walked to the large window that looked out into space. The sight made his heart sink. Hundreds of dark ships surrounded Kepler Station like hungry predators. The Corvac vessels looked like giant insects made of metal and bone. Their hulls pulsed with sick green light and tentacles writhed along their sides. These were the ships that had destroyed a dozen worlds in the past year. Now they had come for the Zelani. Sir, incoming message from the lead Karak ship, reported communications Officer Zen. His hands shook as he worked his controls. Put it through, Yelton ordered. A horrible voice filled the command center. It sounded like grinding metal mixed with screams. People of Kepler Station, you will surrender now. We will harvest your life energy to feed our ships. Those who resist will die slowly. Those who surrender will die quickly. You have 1 hour to decide. The communication ended, leaving only the sound of alarms and distant explosions. Yelton had been a soldier for 40 years. He had fought in the wars that destroyed his home planet. He had led his people across the galaxy to find safety in this remote corner of space. He was tired of running, tired of watching his people suffer, but he also knew they had no choice. Status report. He commanded, we have 12 patrol ships operational, said Lieutenant Vex. They are small craft with basic weapons. The Corvac fleet has over 200 warships. Our station weapons are old mining lasers, not military grade. We also have 40,000 civilians in the residential sectors and 10,000 workers in the mines. Yelton closed his eyes. 40 years of military experience told him this was hopeless. The Corvac were known throughout the galaxy as destroyers. They did not take prisoners. They did not show mercy. They consumed entire worlds and left nothing behind but empty husks floating in space. Send out distress calls on all frequencies, he ordered. Emergency channels, military channel, civilian channels, everything we have. Sir, we have been sending distress calls for 3 days, Zen replied. The Galactic Defense Coalition received our messages. They said they will send help, but it will take 3 weeks for their nearest fleet to reach us. The other governments say this sector is too remote and not worth defending. 3 weeks they would all be dead in 3 hours. Keep sending the calls. Yelton said, someone might hear us. Someone might care enough to help. Station shook again as more Corvac weapons hit their shields. Lights flickered in the command center. Through the window, Yelton could see small fighter craft launching from the enemy ships. They moved like deadly insects, swarming toward the station. Shield failure in Sector 7, reported Lieutenant Vex. Enemy boarding pods are attaching to the outer hull. Yelton picked up his energy rifle from the weapons rack. It was an old model, but it still worked. Around the command center, his officers were checking their own weapons. They all knew what came next. All security Teams to defensive positions, he announced over the station comm system. All civilians are to remain in their quarters with emergency life support active. This is not a drill. The lights went out for a moment, then came back on. Dim emergency power. The main shields had failed. Yelton could hear the sound of metal being cut somewhere in the distance. The Corfac were already inside. Sir, we are getting reports from all over the station, said Lieutenant Vex. 20 boarding sites. Security teams are fighting back, but the Corfac soldiers are too strong. They have energy weapons that cut through our armor like paper. Yellen nodded. The Corps were not just cruel, they were also efficient killers. Their soldiers were twice the size of Zelani, with thick, armor-plated skin and claws that could rip through metal. Worse, they felt no pain and feared nothing. How long until they reached the civilian sectors? He asked. Maybe 30 minutes, sir. The security teams are slowing them down, but not stopping them. 30 minutes. Yellen thought about the families hiding in their small apartments, children who had never known a safe home, parents who had sacrificed everything to bring their families to this remote station, all of them depending on him to protect them. Then, any response to our distress calls, he asked. The communications officer shook his head sadly. Nothing. Sir, the automated systems keep broadcasting, but no one is answering. Through the window, Yelton watched more Corfac ships moving closer. Some of them were enormous, the size of small moons. Those were the harvester ships. Once they attached to the station, they would begin draining the life from everyone inside. The process took days and was incredibly painful. Sir, enemy soldiers have reached level 15, reported Vex. They are moving toward the residential areas. Yeltan made a decision. He turned to his officers. These brave Zelani, who had followed him across the galaxy and served without complaint in this forgotten outpost, I want everyone to know, he said quietly, it has been an honor to serve with you. You are the finest officers I have ever commanded. We may not be able to save everyone, but we can make sure the Corfac pay a price for this victory. His officers straightened their shoulders and gripped their weapons tighter. They were afraid, but they were not going to run. The station shook again, harder this time. More boarding pods were attaching. The Korak were bringing in their heavy assault troops now. These were creatures the size of vehicles with weapons built into their arms. Sir, incoming transmission, said Zen suddenly. Another demand for surrender. Yellen asked. No. Sir, this is different. It is very faint. Coming from deep space, someone is responding to our distress call. Yelton felt a tiny spark of hope. Maybe one of the nearby colonies had sent help. Maybe a merchant ship with some weapons had decided to try, put it through, he ordered. The speakers crackled with static. Then a voice came through. It was speaking in the common trade language with an accent Yelton had never heard before. Kepler Station, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the Battleship Retribution's Edge. We received your distress call. Hold your position. Help is coming. Yellen stared at the communication console. A battleship out here in the void. He had never heard of this ship or this Captain Chen. Zen asked them their estimated time of arrival and fleet strength, but before Zen could respond, the transmission ended. Static filled the speakers again. Sir, I lost the signal, Zen reported. They were very far away. Transmission was breaking up. one ship. Somewhere in the darkness between the stars, one ship was coming to help them. Yellen looked out at the hundreds of quarterdeck vessels and felt his heart sink. Again, whoever this Captain Chen was, she was flying to her death, and she would not arrive in time to save anyone. All stations continued defensive operations. He ordered, make every shot count. The battle for Kepler Station had begun. Deep in the cold emptiness between star systems, the human battleship Retribution's edge drifted through space like a sleeping giant. The ship was old, very old. Its hull bore the scars of 100 battles fought in wars that most of the galaxy had forgotten. Patches of different colored metal showed where repair crews had fixed damage over the centuries. Captain Sarah Chen sat in her command chair, reading reports on a tablet. The bridge around her was dimly lit to save power. Only essential systems were running. Most of the crew was asleep in their quarters. This far from any star, there was little to do but wait and watch the endless darkness. Captain called Lieutenant Jiao from the communication station. I am picking up a distress signal. Chen looked up from her tablet. Distress signals were rare out here in the void. Most ships avoided this empty region of space. What kind of signal, Lieutenant? Emergency broadcast, ma'am. Multiple frequencies. Someone is in serious trouble. Shio worked her controls, filtering out the static. It is coming from the Kepler system, about 6 light years from our current position. Chen stood and walked to the communication station. She had been captain of this old battleship for 12 years. Before that, her father had commanded the ship. Before him, her grandfather. The Retribution's edge had been in the Chen family for 3 generations. Play the signal, she ordered. The bridge speakers crackled with static. Then a desperate voice came through. It was speaking in the common trade language, with the accent of the Zelani people. This is Commander Yellen of Kepler Station. We are under attack by Korak forces. 50,000 civilians need immediate evacuation. We have minimal defenses and cannot hold out much longer. Please, anyone who receives this message, we need help. The signal repeated several times, then faded into static. Chen stared at the speakers. The Korak, she knew that name well. Every human military officer did. They were one of the most dangerous species in the galaxy. They destroyed worlds for food and enslaved entire populations. Lieutenant, how old is that signal? She asked, based on the transmission delay. About 72 hours, Captain. The attack is happening right now. Chen turned to the navigation station. Petty Officer Santos, plot a course to the Kepler system. Maximum burn. Santos looked surprised. Captain, that will put us in the middle of a core fleet. Sensor readings show at least 200 enemy ships. I heard the distress call too. Santos, plot the course. Yes, ma'am. Chen walked to the center of the bridge and pressed a button on her command console. Throughout the ship, speakers activated. All hands, this is the Captain General. Quarters, all hands to battle stations. We have a mission. Alarm lights began flashing red throughout the ship. In the corridors, crew members ran to their positions. The Retribution's edge had only 847 people aboard. Once ships like this carried 3,000, but that was before the budget cuts, before Earth decided the outer rim was not important anymore. Chief Engineer Marcus Torres arrived on the bridge, still pulling on his uniform jacket. He was a big man with graying hair and hands stained with engine grease. "Captain, what is our situation?" he asked. "Rescue mission Marcus, 50,000. Civilians under attack by Korak forces." "How are our engines?" Torres scratched his beard. "The main drive is running at 80% efficiency. We can push it to maximum burn, but it will stress the system." "How far are we going?" 6 light years, and we need to get there fast. "I can give you maximum speed for 18 hours. After that, we will need to stop for repairs or risk a core breach." Chen nodded. "Do it. What about our weapons?" "Plasma torpedoes are at 60% capacity. Rail guns are operational, but we are low on ammunition. The main cannon needs a new focusing crystal, but it will still fire. Shields are patched with salvage parts, but they will hold." It was not good news, but it was what they had. The Retribution's edge was old and undermanned, but the crew was experienced. They had fought pirates, smugglers, and worse in the lawless regions of space. "Atlas, are you online?" Chin called out. A calm, artificial voice responded from speakers around the bridge. "Yes, Captain. All systems are functional, though running on backup processors." Atlas was the ship's artificial intelligence, like everything else on the Retribution's edge. It was old but reliable. The A had been helping human crews fight battles for over 200 years. Atlas analyzed the tactical situation at Kepler Station. "What are we facing?" "Based on the distress signal and known Corfac fleet compositions, you will be engaging approximately 200 enemy vessels. Enemy ships include heavy cruisers, destroyers, fighter squadrons, and at least 3 harvester ships. Our probability of survival in direct combat is less than 5%. The bridge fell silent. Everyone had known the odds were bad, but hearing it stated so clearly made it real. Lieutenant Zio spoke quietly. "Captain, maybe we should call for backup. The Galactic Defense Coalition has fleets in nearby sectors." Chen looked at her young communications officer. Zio was smart and capable, but she had not seen as much of the galaxy as Chen had. "Lieutenant, how long would it take for GDC forces to reach Kepler Station?" "At least 3 weeks, ma'am." "And how long do you think those civilians have?" Zio looked down at her console. "A few hours at most." Chen walked to the main view screen, which showed the starfield ahead of them. Somewhere in that darkness, 50,000 people were fighting for their lives. They had sent out a desperate call for help, not knowing if anyone would hear or care. "I have been patrolling the outer rim for 12 years, Chen said to her crew. "I have seen what the Korak do to civilian populations. They do not take prisoners. They do not show mercy. If we do not help those people, no one will." She turned back to her officers. "I will not order anyone to come with me on this mission. The odds are terrible. Most of us will probably die. Anyone who wants to transfer to an escape pod can do so now." The bridge crew looked at each other, then one by one they turned back to their stations. "We are with you, Captain," said Lieutenant Jiao. Torres cracked his knuckles. "Those engine modifications I have been wanting to try. Now seems like a good time." Santos grinned from the navigation station. "I always wanted to see what this old ship could do in a real fight." Chen felt a surge of pride. This was why she loved her crew. They were volunteers, every one of them. They could have transferred to safer assignments long ago. Instead, they chose to stay out here in the darkness, protecting people who would never know Their names, Atlas calculate our best. Approach to the Kepler system, I want to hit them where they do not expect us. Working Captain. I recommend using the gas giant's gravity well to mask our approach. We can slingshot around the planet and attack from the opposite side of their formation. Good. What about communications? Can we contact the station when we arrive? Negative, Korak. Forces will be jamming all frequencies. We will be going in blind. Chen nodded. It was what she had expected. The Korfak were efficient in their cruelty. All stations prepare for maximum burn. We are going to push this old ship harder than she has ever been pushed before. If she breaks apart, at least we will be heading in the right direction. The Retribution's edge began to accelerate toward the Kepler system. Its engines howled through space, leaving a trail of superheated plasma behind it. In the depths of the ship, Tor's and his engineering teams worked frantically to keep the ancient systems from overloading. Chen remained on the bridge, watching the stars slowly shift as they approached light speed. In 18 hours, they would arrive at Kepler Station 847. Humans against 200 Korak warships. She thought about her grandfather who had commanded this ship during the colony wars. He had faced impossible odds too, and somehow found a way to win. Chen hoped she had inherited some of his tactical genius along with his ship. Captain, said Atlas quietly, I have been analyzing Korak fleet tactics. I believe I have identified a weakness. Chen smiled grimly. Tell me. Retribution's edge dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system. Captain Chen gripped her command chair as the ship shuddered from the transition. On the main view screen she could see the gas giant Kepler Prime, massive blue-green world surrounded by glowing rings of ice and rock. Sensors. Report, she ordered. Lieutenant Rodriguez, the ship's science officer, worked frantically at his station. Captain, I am reading massive energy signatures near the mining station. The Korfak fleet is enormous. I count over 200 ships, including 3 harvester vessels. Chen studied the tactical display. The enemy fleet surrounded Kepler Station like a pack of wolves. The station's shields were flickering and failing. Small explosions bloomed along its hull where Korfak weapons struck home. Any sign of resistance from the station? She asked. Minimal. Captain, I detect a few patrol ships, but they are heavily outgunned. Station's weapons appear to be mining lasers, not military grade. Through the view screen, Chen could see the Korfak ships more clearly now. They were horrible things, looking more like living creatures than machines. Their hulls pulsed with sick green light, and organic tentacles writhed along their sides. These were ships that fed on death and destruction. Atlas tactical analysis, Chen called out. The ship's AI responded immediately. Captain, direct assault against the main fleet would result in our destruction within minutes. However, I have identified the correct command structure. They use a hive mind system controlled from their flagship, a massive biocruiser at the center of their formation. What happens if we destroy the flagship? Caress would lose coordination. Individual ships would likely turn on each other as their lesser commanders compete for control. It is their greatest strength and their greatest weakness. Chen nodded. She had studied Korfak tactics during her years at the military academy. They were incredibly effective when working together, but without central command. They became chaotic and unpredictable. The problem is getting close enough to the flagship, she said. It is protected by dozens of escort vessels. Chief Torres spoke up from his position. Near the engineering console, Captain. We could use the gas giant's gravity. Well, slingshot around the planet and hit them from behind. They would not expect an attack from that direction. Chen looked at the tactical display. Again, it was dangerous. The ship would have to survive passage through Kepler Prime's radiation belt and magnetic field, but it might be their only chance. How close can we get to the planet without being detected? She asked. The gas giant's magnetic field will scramble their sensors, Rodriguez reported. We could approach from the dark side and use the planet's mass to hide our energy signature. Do it, Santos. Plot a slingshot course around Kepler Prime, maximum velocity. I want to hit that flagship before they know we are here. The Retribution's edge changed course, diving toward the massive gas giant. As they approached, the ship began to shake from gravitational forces. The hull groaned under the stress, and several warning lights flashed on the bridge. Hull integrity holding, reported Torres, but we are pushing the structural limits. Chen watched the planet grow larger on the view screen. Kepler Prime was beautiful in a deadly way. Storms the size of Earth raged across its surface, and lightning bolts hundreds of miles long flickered through its atmosphere. Entering the radiation belt, announced Rodriguez. All non-essential systems shutting down to prevent damage. Bridge lights dimmed as power was diverted to shields and structural integrity. The ship flew deeper into the planet's magnetic field, using the charged particles and radiation to mask their approach. Time to emergence, Shen asked. 4 minutes, Captain. Santos replied. We will come out directly behind the Korek flagship at maximum velocity. Chen activated the shipwide communication system. All hands, this is the captain. In 4 minutes we will engage the enemy. This is what we trained for. This is why we are here. Make every shot count. Throughout the ship, the crew prepared for battle. In the weapons bays, technicians loaded the last of their plasma torpedoes. Marines checked their equipment in case boarding became necessary. In engineering, Torres and his team stood ready to manage battle damage emerging from the planet. Shadow in 30 seconds, Santos announced. Chen stood up from her command chair. This was the moment that would decide everything. Either they would destroy the Korfak command ship and save 50,000 lives, or they would die in the attempt. All weapons prepare to fire. Target the flagship central core. The Retribution's edge burst from behind Kepler Prime like a missile. The massive gas giant had accelerated them to incredible speed. They were moving so fast that the Korfak sensors could not track them properly. The enemy flagship was enormous, easily 10 times the size of the human Battleship. Its biomechanical hull pulsed with veins of green energy. Weapon ports along its sides were already turning to track the approaching threat. Fire all weapons, Chen shouted. The Retribution's edge unleashed everything it had. Plasma torpedoes streaked toward the target, their white hot trails lighting up space. Rail gun rounds followed, traveling at a significant fraction of light speed. The main cannon charged up and fired a devastating beam of concentrated energy. The weapon struck the Korfak flagship in a concentrated barrage. Its bio-armor began to crack and burn. Green fluid leaked from the wounds like blood, but the massive ship was still functional. Still dangerous, direct hit but minimal damage, reported the weapons officer. That armor is incredibly thick. The Korak flagship was beginning to turn, bringing its own massive weapons to bear. Chen could see energy building up in weapons that could destroy her ship. With a single shot, Tors, I need more speed, she called out. Captain, the engines are already at maximum burn. We cannot go any faster. Chen made a decision that surprised everyone on the bridge. Instead of trying to escape or maneuver for another attack, she pointed the ship directly at the enemy flagship. All hands brace for impact. We are going to ram them. The bridge crew stared at her in shock. The Retribution's edge was heavily armored, but ramming a ship 10 times their size was suicide. Captain, the collision will destroy both ships, Atlas pointed out. I know, Chen replied calmly, but it will also eliminate their command structure. Sometimes you have to sacrifice the peace to win the game. Retribution's edge accelerated toward the Korfak flagship. Its reinforced prow was designed for exactly this kind of attack, though it had never been used this way before. The enemy ship tried to turn away, but it was too massive to change course quickly. Impact in 10 seconds, Santos announced. Chen gripped her command chair and watched the enemy ship grow larger on the view screen. She thought about her grandfather, who had died in a similar ramming attack during the colony wars. She thought about the 50,000 civilians counting on them to succeed. The Retribution's edge struck the Korak flagship like a spear. Its armored prow punched through the biomechanical hull and penetrated deep into the ship's core. The impact sent shock waves through both vessels. Explosions bloomed along the flagship's hull as its internal systems failed, but the human ship had been built to survive such impacts. Its internal structure held together even as the outer hull buckled and cracked. Emergency bulkheads sealed off the damaged sections and backup systems came online. On the bridge, Chen picked herself up from the floor. The consoles were sparking and the main view screen had gone dark, but they were still alive and, more importantly, still fighting. Damage report, she called out. Forward sections are heavily damaged. Tors reported. We have lost main power to weapons, but the reactor is stable and life support is functioning. What about the enemy flagship? Rodriguez checked his sensors. It is breaking apart, Captain. We penetrated their core structure. They are losing power throughout the ship. On the secondary view screen, Chen could see the results of their attack. The massive Korfak flagship was splitting in half, green fire bleeding from its wounds, but more importantly, the rest of the enemy fleet was beginning to change behavior. Captain, the Korfak ships are turning on each other, Rodriguez reported excitedly. Without central command, they are fighting among themselves. Chen allowed herself a small smile. The plan had worked, but their victory would be short-lived if they could not escape. Santos, can we maneuver? Maneuvering. Thrusters are operational, but we have lost main engine power. We are drifting toward Kepler Station. Good, maybe we can still help with the evacuation, but even as she spoke, Shen could see more Korfak ships breaking away from the chaotic fleet battle and heading toward their damaged vessel. The Retribution's edge had struck a devastating blow, but the fight was far from over. All remaining weapons prepared a fire. She Ordered, we are not done yet. The Retribution's edge drifted through space, like a wounded animal trailing debris. An atmosphere from dozens of hull breaches, emergency lights flickered throughout the ship as damage control teams raced to seal the worst leaks. Captain Chen gripped her command chair as another Coric plasma blast struck. Their failing shields, shield generator 3 is offline, reported Chief Torres from engineering. His voice was strained as he worked to keep their systems functional. We have lost main power to 2 weapons batteries. The reactor is running on backup cooling systems. Chen watched the tactical display as 5 Corfac destroyers moved in for the kill. Behind them, the enemy fleet was still fighting among themselves, but these ships had broken away to finish off the human vessel that had caused so much damage. How much longer can we maintain shields, she asked. Maybe 10 minutes. Captain, after that, we are defenseless. 10 minutes, Chen looked around the bridge at her crew. Half the consoles were dark or sparking. Lieutenant Rodriguez had a cut on his forehead from flying debris. Petty Officer Santos was manually operating the navigation controls because the main computer was damaged. Captain, incoming message from Kepler Station, announced Lieutenant Zio. Put it through. Commander Yelton's voice came through the speakers, filled with desperate gratitude. Human ship, this is Kepler Station. We cannot believe you came for us. Our sensors show you are heavily damaged. Can we assist with repairs? Chen almost smiled despite their desperate situation. The Zelani commander was offering to help them when his own station was falling apart. Kepler Station, this is Captain Chen. We appreciate the offer, but you need to focus on evacuating your civilians. We will hold off the remaining Corfac ships as long as possible. Captain, we have prepared our evacuation ships, but they cannot launch while those destroyers are attacking. You have already done more than anyone could ask. Chen looked at the tactical display again. The 5 Corfac ships were moving into attack formation. Each one was twice the size of her damaged battleship. In a fair fight, they would destroy the Retribution's edge in minutes, but Chen had not survived 12 years in the outer rim by fighting fair. Atlas, what is the status of our reactor core? She asked. The ship's AI, the main reactor is stable but running at maximum output to maintain shields and life support. Why do you ask, Captain? Can we overload it? The bridge fell silent. Everyone understood what she was suggesting. Overloading the reactor would turn their ship into a massive bomb. It would destroy anything within several kilometers. Captain Torres said quietly, if we overload the reactor, there will be no time for evacuation. The crew compartments are too damaged for the escape pods to function properly. Chen nodded. She had already considered that most of their escape pods had been destroyed in the ramming attack. The few that remained were blocked by debris or damage beyond use. I know, Marcus, but if we do not stop those destroyers, 50,000 civilians will die. Our mission was to protect them, not to save ourselves. She activated the shipwide communication system throughout the Retribution's edge. Crew members stopped what they were doing to listen to their captain's voice. All hands, this is Captain Chen. Our ship is dying and we do not have enough escape pods for everyone. The enemy ships closing on our position will destroy Kepler Station. If we do not stop them, I am going to overload our reactor and ram the lead Destroyer. This will destroy our ship. But it will also eliminate the threat to the civilians. She paused, looking around the bridge at her officers. I will not order anyone to stay. Those who can reach the functioning escape pod should do so now, but someone needs to remain on the bridge to pilot the ship. During its final approach, the bridge crew looked at each other. Chen expected them to head for the escape pods. They were young with their whole lives ahead of them. They had already done more than enough. Instead, Lieutenant Zhao returned to her communication station. Captain, I am staying. Someone needs to maintain contact with the station. Santos checked his navigation controls. I am staying too. You will need someone to plot the approach course. Rodriguez wiped blood from his forehead and resumed his position at the science station. The sensor array needs constant adjustment. I will stay. One by one, the entire bridge crew took their positions. Chen felt her throat tighten with emotion. These brave men and women were choosing to die with their ship rather than abandon their duty. Tor's report. To the reactor room, she ordered, I need you to manually override the safety systems. The chief engineer nodded grimly. Understood, Captain. It will take about 5 minutes to bypass all the safeguards. As Tor's left the bridge, Chen began preparations for their final attack. On the view screen, she could see the Korak destroyers growing larger as they approached. Their biomechanical hulls pulsed with malevolent energy, and their weapons were charging for another barrage. Santos plot an intercept course with the lead destroyer. Full impulse power course plotted, Captain. But without main engines, we can only achieve about 60% of normal speed. It will have to be enough throughout the ship, the remaining crew members said their final goodbyes. In the medical bay, Dr. Rodriguez treated wounded sailors while preparing for the inevitable. In the weapons bays, technicians made sure the remaining guns would fire until the very end. In the corridors, Marines took defensive positions in case the enemy tried to board. Captain, I have emergency power to the main engines, Torres reported. From engineering, I am bypassing the reactor safeties now. Once I start the overload sequence, we will have approximately 8 minutes before the explosion. Understood. Begin the sequence. Deep in the ship's core, Torres worked with desperate precision. He disabled one safety system after another, allowing the reactor to build up energy far beyond its normal limits. The temperature in the reactor room climbed steadily as radiation alarms screamed their warnings. Overload sequence initiated, Torres announced. 7 minutes to detonation. The Retribution's edge began to accelerate toward the enemy formation. Its damaged engines howled with effort as they pushed the ship toward its final battle. On the bridge, Chen watched the distance close between them and the lead destroyer. Captain, the Corfax ships are changing course, Rodriguez reported. They seem to realize what we are doing. Too late. Chen replied, we have too much momentum. They cannot avoid us now. The enemy ships began firing everything they had at the approaching human vessel. Plasma bolts and energy beams hammered the Retribution's edge, tearing away armor and destroying what remained of their weapons. But the ship continued forward, driven by the determination of its crew. 5 minutes to detonation, Torres announced. His voice was calm despite the fact that he was standing next to a reactor that would soon explode with the force of a small star. All stations maintain course and speed, Chen ordered. Do not let them stop us. One of the Corfac destroyers tried to ram them, hoping to knock the human ship off course. But Santos adjusted their trajectory at the last second and the alien vessel missed by mere meters. The Corfac ship's biomechanical hull scraped against their armor, leaving green acid burns along their side. 3 minutes to detonation. Chen could see individual details on the lead destroyer now. Its hull was covered with weapon ports and sensor arrays. Organic tentacles writhed along its sides like massive worms. It was a ship designed for destruction and death. 2 minutes to detonation. The bridge shook as more enemy fire struck them. The main view screen cracked and sparks flew from damaged consoles, but the crew remained at their posts, determined to see their mission through to the end. 1 minute to detonation. Chen opened a communication channel to Kepler Station. Commander Yelton, this is Captain Chen. In 60 seconds, there will be a large explosion. Use that opportunity to launch your evacuation ships. Get your people to safety. Captain Chen. Yelton's voice was thick with emotion. We will never forget what you have done for us. Your sacrifice will be remembered forever. 30 seconds to detonation. The lead Corfac destroyer filled the entire view screen now. Chen could see its bridge, where alien commanders were probably screaming orders to their crew. They knew what was coming, but there was nothing they could do to stop it. 10 seconds. Chen looked around the bridge one last time at her brave crew. It has been an honor to serve with all of you. The Retribution's edge struck the Corfac destroyer at the exact moment its reactor exploded. The blast was visible from the other side of the star system, a brilliant white flash that briefly outshone the local sun. When the light faded, both ships were gone, replaced by an expanding cloud of superheated gas and debris. But the sacrifice had accomplished its goal. The remaining Corfac ships already fighting among themselves after losing their command structure, scattered in panic. Within hours, Kepler Station was able to launch its evacuation ships and ferry all 50,000 civilians to safety. Commander Yellen personally led the search and rescue operation, hoping to find survivors from the human ship. They found a few escape pods containing 89 crew members who had managed to launch before the final attack. Among them was Chief Torres, badly injured but alive. But Captain Sarah Chen and most of her crew had chosen to stay with their ship to the very end. They had given their lives to save people they had never met. In a corner of space, most of the 6 months after the Battle of Kepler Station, Commander Yelton stood before a massive memorial wall in the station's main plaza. 50,000 names were carved into the black stone, representing every civilian who had been saved by the sacrifice of the human crew. At the center of the memorial, in letters of gold, were the names of the 847 crew members of the Retribution's Edge who had given their lives. The plaza was busy with activity. Zelani families walked past, children playing games while their parents conducted business. New arrivals from across the galaxy had come to settle at Kepler Station, drawn by the story of courage and sacrifice that had made this place famous throughout known space. Commander, said Lieutenant Vex, approaching with a data pad in her hands, the morning reports are ready for your review. Yellen took the pad but continued to stare at the memorial. In The center, above all the other names, was the inscription he had personally chosen: Captain Sarah Chen and the crew of the Retribution's Edge. They came when no one else would. Any word from the Galactic Defense Coalition? He asked. Yes, sir. Fleet Admiral Corvus will arrive tomorrow with a full battle group. They want to establish a permanent base here to protect the outer rim colonies. Yellen almost smiled. 6 months ago, the GDC had said this sector was too remote and unimportant to defend. Now they were rushing to establish a presence here, embarrassed by the story of how a single human ship had done what their entire fleet could. Not, what about the memorial broadcast? He asked. It continues on all frequencies, sir. Captain Chen's final transmission has been heard by billions of beings across the galaxy. The response has been overwhelming. That had been Yelton's idea. Every day at exactly noon, Kepler Station broadcast the final message from the Retribution's Edge on every available frequency. The transmission was simple but powerful. When darkness comes for the innocent, we stand between them and the void, not because we must, but because we can. The words had become a rallying cry for beings across the galaxy who believed in protecting the weak and standing up to bullies like the Corfac. Sir, there is something else, Vex said quietly. We have received another message from Earth. Yellen turned to look at his aide. What kind of message? Earth Command wants to send a delegation to study the battle records. They also want to interview the survivors. Chief Torres was still recovering in the station's medical center. The human engineer had suffered severe radiation poisoning during the reactor overload, but the Zelani doctors had saved his life. The other 88 survivors were gradually returning to Earth aboard passenger ships, carrying with them stories that would inspire a new generation of human space crews. Tell Earth Command they are welcome, Yelton said, but they should know that Chief Torres has already told his story to every reporter in the galaxy. The whole universe knows what happened here, and it was true. The story of the Retribution's Edge had spread far beyond the outer rim. On worlds throughout known space, beings told their children about the human ship that had fought impossible odds to save strangers. Militarities included the Battle of Kepler Station in their required studies. Even species that had never heard of humans before now spoke of human courage as something special and rare. The political effects had been immediate and dramatic. Dozens of species had formed mutual defense pacts inspired by the example of the human crew. The Outer Rim Defense Alliance had been established just 3 months after the battle, with Kepler Station as its headquarters. Commander, you have a visitor, announced Security Chief Zan over the communication system. Yellen looked around the plaza and saw a familiar figure approaching. It was Captain Maria Santos, the younger sister of Petty Officer Santos, who had died on the bridge of the Retribution's Edge. She wore the uniform of Earth Fleet and carried herself with the same quiet confidence her brother had shown. Commander Yelton, she said, offering a formal salute. I am Captain Santos of the Earth vessel Defiance. I bring greetings from Earth Command and the families of the crew. Yellen returned the salute. He had been expecting this visit. Earth had finally decided to take the Outer Rim seriously, and they were sending their best ships and crews to establish a permanent presence. Welcome to Kepler Station, Captain Brothers served with honor aboard the Retribution's Edge. His sacrifice will never be forgotten. Maria Santos nodded, her eyes moving to the memorial wall. Commander, I want you to know that Earth fleet has made some changes since the battle. We are establishing new patrol routes in the outer rim. No distress call will go unanswered again. That is good to hear, Captain, but tell me what brings you here specifically. Santos smiled. The Defiance is the first ship of a new class of vessels. We call them the Chen-class battleships, named after Captain Sarah Chen. They are designed specifically for long-range patrol and rescue operations in remote sectors. Yellen felt a surge of emotion. The humans were naming their new ships after the captain who had saved his people. It was a fitting tribute to her memory. There is something else, Santos continued. Earthfleet has established a new award for exceptional courage in the service of others. It is called the Retribution Medal, and it will be given to crews who risk everything to save lives. Your people honor their heroes. Well, Yellen said, we try to, Commander. But I should mention that the first Retribution Medal was awardedly to a Zelani officer. You stared at her in surprise. I do not understand. Your defense of Kepler Station inspired Earth Command to investigate their own policies. They realized that courage and sacrifice are not limited to any single species. The medal will be awarded to anyone, human or alien, who demonstrates the same spirit that Captain Chen and her crew showed here. Lieutenant Vex stepped forward with another data pad. Commander, we are receiving multiple incoming signals. Ships are requesting permission to dock. Yellen looked at the readings. 3 vessels were approaching the station. Zelani medical ship, a Terran cargo freighter, and a Canondorian patrol craft. All 3 species had been traditional enemies before the Battle of Kepler Station. Now they work together in the Outer Rim Defense Alliance. Grant them docking permission, he ordered. All vessels are welcome at Kepler Station. As the ships approached, Yelton thought about how much had changed in just 6 months. The Outer Rim was no longer forgotten wasteland where the strong preyed on the weak. It had become a symbol of cooperation and mutual defense. Captain Santos, he said, would you like to visit the tactical center? We have preserved all the sensor recordings from the battle. Many officers come here to study Captain Chen's tactics. I would be honored, Commander. As they walked through the station, Yellen pointed out the changes that had been made since the battle. The residential areas had been expanded to accommodate new settlers. The docking bays had been enlarged to handle the increased traffic. Most importantly, a new defense grid had been installed, staffed by crews from a dozen different species. Commander, may I ask you something? Santos said as they entered the tactical center. Of course. Do you really think my brother and the others knew they were going to die when they stayed on the bridge? Yellen considered the question carefully. He had studied the final transmissions from the Retribution's Edge many times. The crew had known exactly what they were doing. Captain, your brother and his shipmates made a choice. They could have tried to save themselves, but they chose to save others instead. That is the definition of heroism. Santos nodded, her eyes studying the tactical displays that showed the final moments of the battle. Earth Command wants to know if we learned anything from their sacrifice. We learned that the galaxy is not as Darker places we thought, Yellen replied. We learned that there are still beings willing to risk everything for strangers. Most importantly, we learned that when good people work together, they can overcome any enemy. As if to prove his point, the communication system activated with an urgent message. All stations, this is the survey ship New Horizon. We are under attack by pirates in the Theta sector. We have civilians aboard and need immediate assistance. Yellen and Santos looked at each other, then moved quickly to the communication station. New Horizon, this is Kepler Station Command. Yelton announced help is on the way. The outer rim defense fleet will reach you in 4 hours. He switched to a different frequency. Alliance vessels in the Theta sector. We have a code red rescue mission. Civilian ship under attack. Within minutes, responses came in from a dozen different ships representing 6 species. Each one reported they were changing course to assist the New Horizon. Captain Santos watched the tactical display as friendly ships converged on the attack site. Commander, this is incredible. 6 months ago, most of these species barely spoke to each other. That is the legacy of the Retribution's Edge. Yellen said. Captain Chen and her crew showed us that we are stronger when we work together. Their sacrifice created something bigger than any of us imagined. The tactical display showed the rescue fleet reaching the New Horizon. The pirates, outnumbered and outgunned, fled without a fight.